These are all past, present, and current, or however you want to word that. Past, today, and future ones after the meeting.
So most of those are action items tonight.
Okay.
Except, well, the last minute.
Eric, your microphone is on.
There's one document that's.
Eric, your mic is on. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I did get yours working. If you want to use it, you can. Or if you want to just for now.
I don't it don't matter. What was it?
I ended up disconnecting that battery and then plugging it back in, and then it started charging right away. So I don't know what was going on. But
Why don't you go ahead?
I can just leave it on the charger for now, or
I have my muted, right?
Your voice was muted.
On here I showed, I clicked
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We are the Owatonna School Board. It is Monday. It's July 13th at 5:30. I'm going to call this meeting to order. And Eric, I'll ask you to do our roll call, please. I'm here.
Here.
Start with you, Mark. Tim? Did he respond?
Having a difficult time hearing you, Eric, but did you say Tim?
Yeah, yes, Tim,
Present.
Jolene,
Here.
Nikki,
Here.
Christina,
Here.
and Lori.
Here.
And I myself here, all present, 7.
Very good. Thank you, Eric. As you are able to, folks, if you would please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first action item tonight would be simply to approve the agenda. We'll entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Hey, Mark, just a point of order. We may want to recognize Daniela is here today.
Daniela is here. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hello.
Thank you, Lori. We'll continue on. We do have a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion with regard to the agenda as presented? Eric, we'll ask you to take the vote on this for us.
Mark,
Aye.
Nikki,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Jolene,
Aye.
Christina,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
and I myself and I, 7-0 pass.
Motion carries. Thank you, folks. Next up would be item 4, which would be public forum. We'll kind of go around the horn, and as you folks appear on my screen, I'll do it that way. So Eric, I'll start with you. Do you have anything for a board forum tonight?
Nothing tonight.
Lori, how about you?
Just to comment that the issues we're talking about tonight are relevant. There's lots of community conversation around these, so it'll be good. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may interject, this is a time for public forum. You'll get to board forum lately, so we may want to go back and do public forum. Thank you.
Yeah, let's back up just a step if we can. Sorry about that, folks. I'll turn things back over and I'll double check with our superintendent one last time. Did we have anything for public forum tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do not have any public forum as none of, there were no emails submitted to the school district address before 3 p.m. today. Thank you.
Folks, thanks, Mr. Superintendent. Sorry about that, folks. That addressed the public forum. Now we'll take care of the board forum. Eric didn't have anything. Lori offered some wise counsel with regard to some weighty issues on the agenda. Anything else for you to add, Lori?
No, thank you.
Thanks. Nikki, I'm going to turn to you.
Nothing.
How about you, Christina? Anything for board forum?
I don't have anything today.
Thank you. Jolene? And Tim?
Yeah, nothing for me.
Okay. And I have nothing for board forum tonight either. I'm going to turn things back over to Mr. Elstad for any comments regarding the administrative report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. As always is our practice in July, we typically don't ask buildings for their reports. There will be a building report coming for you in August again, but obviously as July is typically a time for administrators to step away from their work. It's not quite that way this summer, but I can tell you they are busy working in their buildings. However, they did not prepare a building report, but I do, however, have a few comments in regard to superintendent's report. The thing that's probably weighing on most everyone's mind is a fall reopening planning. This past Friday, there were about probably 10 or 12 people from our community that were part of the superintendent coffee and conversation. Lori Weisenberger was there as a representative of the board. And within that meeting, I discussed that, as that has been released by the Department of Education, that there are 3 possible scenarios that set themselves up for any time this year. Those 3 being in-person learning, a hybrid approach, which is really a balance of distance learning and in-person, as well as distance learning, which we experienced during the 4th quarter of this past school year. The timeline is still setting up such that the governor and the Department of Education are looking to provide guidance for our fall reopening the week of July 27th, so a couple weeks from today, or this week anyway. The one thing that we are working on here with our team is many different factors that go into this decision. The one thing I want to be clear about with our school board, as well as those in the community, this should not be a political issue. This is a health issue, and we are going to take the guidance from our colleagues at the Department of Health to help guide us in this decision. We have always and will always continue to put student safety and staff safety as our #1 priority. And so if we feel that it is safe to return with our students, it isn't a political decision. It's a decision based upon the science that we know around COVID-19. So I want to make that clear to everyone that we're taking the politics out of this. We're trying to make these decisions based upon safety of our students and staff being our continued priority. Within that, these are just a few of the sort of factors that we're having to consider. Transportation, childcare, food service, curriculum, sanitizing and cleaning, protective equipment, and then of course, whether or not students or staff are ill and how do we substitute for them when they're not here. So there's a lot of factors weighing in on this. We have been tasked, and we are diligently moving forward with 3 possible scenarios. And our team will be ready the week of July 27th. So whatever that guidance is, our next step then is to communicate with our staff first and then our parents the week of August 3rd. What I would ask is at some point after that guidance is given to us, I may be asking the board to consider a special meeting, because as part of policy and as part of potential calendar changes that may be part of this, I would ask the board to consider being part of a special meeting to approve that plan moving forward. And so check your emails here within the next, especially 2 weeks, to see if that might be something that we have to plan to do. We are then scheduled for an August 10 work session. We'll discuss in much more detail, but the plan itself will be laid out for the board approval as soon as we have identified our start. A couple of things that I think need to be said around it. The early indications coming from the governor's office and the Department of Ed are such that the decision may not be a broad brushstroke across the state. In fact, the decision may be more locally driven based upon the preponderance of COVID-19 in our county or in our community. We've been given guidance that perhaps it would even drill down to classroom and or building closure versus an entire district closure. But all of those decisions will come with guidance from the Department of Health as we edge closer to how we'll open up in the fall. So there's a lot more to be said. One other piece I wanted to share was last week, there was a press release around the family survey that Minnesota Department of Education collected. Just a few quick facts around that. Within that, the biggest question was the comfort level of parents sending their children back to school if we were in person. In that survey, 64% of the respondents, I believe there were 137,000 responses across the state. 64% of them indicated that they would have a comfort with in-person learning for their students again. 11% that were polled said they did not feel comfortable returning students to school, and 21% needed more information. And within that group of 21%, the biggest drivers were they wanted clear protocols around sanitizing and cleaning. They wanted clear protocol around masks or other protective protective equipment for students and staff. And so within those are some of the things we're going to have to set in place about what our guidance will be and how we'll follow suit in the Owatonna School District. So with that, I would ask for any questions that board members might have. Again, I'm being rather ambiguous because at this point, we're still in the planning stages before we put any finality to our plans.
Any questions from the board? As you were talking about the possibility of a special meeting, are you envisioning that this would be something that could possibly happen before the August 10th work session, or would it land somewhere between the work session and the regular meeting?
In order for us to communicate with the community what we believe would be our plan moving forward, what we would be asking for perhaps, and again, there are a lot of question marks because what we've been told is the guidance will come the week of July 27th, which could lead us right up to Friday, August 1st. What we're asking for is before we would communicate the week of August 3rd. So the zone I'm giving you for consideration of a potential special meeting would be anywhere between Tuesday, the 28th of July, and probably Thursday, what would be, I believe, the 7th, Thursday, the 6th of August. Because within that time frame, we would need to get board approval before we communicated those items with the community and parents.
And then it would be your intent that we would then use that work session for a deeper dive on the various contingency plans that your team has worked out.
That's correct, and would allow the board, I mean, obviously, we want to be available for questions leading up to it. What the board is actually going to be asked to approve is just a tentative plan for us moving forward in all three of the models about how we plan and intend to roll that forward. Very high viewpoint of that. The 10th would be an opportunity for the board to dig a little deeper on some of the nuances within it. But again, the board is just being asked to, as a policymaker, because some of that may entail a schedule or calendar change. So that's something the board does is to do those approvals for calendars, but also just in general, what the general plan would be. The caveat I would throw out there is that the best evidence we have is what shows up on that particular day. And we noticed that from our plan this spring. So our plan on August 3rd that we communicate is going to have to be somewhat agile because things could change before we finally start school. And so we are all going to experience what it's like to be flexible and agile this year to move in a different direction as the pandemic sees fit. So yes, to answer your question long-windedly, somewhere between Tuesday, July 28th and perhaps Thursday, the 6th of August would be our zone to call a special meeting for the purposes of approving that item.
Thanks for that clarification. I'll turn back to the board one more time to see anybody else have any questions. Okay, I'm hearing none. We will move on to item 6, which would be the consent agenda. The quick reminder here is that we would be approving the minutes from June 22nd, as well as the personnel report. And we can pull either item out if board members would like to see that happen. Short of that, I'm looking to see if anybody has any comments. And with that, would one of you be kind enough to introduce a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion.
Second.
And Tim has the second. Any further discussion on this topic? Hearing none. Eric, I'll turn it over to you for the vote.
Yep. Mark?
Aye.
Nikki?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Jolene?
Aye.
Christina?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
And I myself, an aye. 7-0 pass.
Motion carries. Thank you. We're going to move on to item 7 tonight. Several different items that are needing board action. The first of which, item 7A, is the approval of compensation and benefits with individual and non-affiliated employees. I'll turn things over to Mr. Elstad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. What you're being asked to consider for approval tonight is a compensation and benefits for those non-affiliated employees. Chris Pika is present in the meeting tonight, so I would ask if you have any questions that she'd be able to respond to those. So at this time, I would open it up for board member questions to Ms. Pika.
Chris, maybe you can just remind us all, can you give an example of a non-affiliated employee?
You'd have our school nurses, our technology, my HR generalist and specialist, the benefits specialist, positions like that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, just in the interest of having things move along smoothly, I will make the motion that we approve the compensation and benefits with individual non-affiliated employees. Let me rephrase. I move that the board approve the 2020 through 2022 salary and benefits package and employee guideline changes and authorize the chair and clerk to execute the individual agreements on behalf of the school board.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Eric, I'll turn it over to you for the roll call.
Mark,
Aye.
Nikki,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Jolene,
Aye.
Christina,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
and I myself, an aye. 7-0 vote for pass.
That motion carries. Item B tonight would be the approval of compensation and benefits with the directors. Once again, Mr. Elstad.
Again, similarly, this is compensation for our district directors, and I would turn it over to Chris Pika if board members have questions.
Looking through any board members with questions? Okay, once again, hearing none. I will then move that the board approve the 2020 through 2022 individual director level compensation packages and authorize the chair and clerk to execute the individual agreements on behalf of the school board.
Second.
You get that, Sarah? We have a motion and a second. Eric, I'll turn it over to you for the roll call.
Mark,
Aye.
Nikki,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Jolene,
Aye.
Christina,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
and I myself, an aye. 7-0 for pass.
That motion carries. Item C under section 7 is the long-term facilities maintenance. I will once again turn it over to Mr. Elstad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board tonight. Long-term facilities is an annual report that goes for consideration of the school board about this time every year. And I have asked both Amanda Heilman, our Director of Finance and Operations, and Bob Olson, our Director of Facilities and Infrastructure, to be available to do a little briefing for the board tonight, as well as be available for your questions. So I will turn it over to Bob and or Amanda.
Sounds good. Amanda, you want to go or you want me to take it?
I can do that. So tonight we're presenting our budget for LTFM for fiscal year 22 is what you'll be approving, and what we will be asked to approve. And we will be putting on our levy later this fall. So we're asking for you to potentially consider 3.1 million in total projects for our LTFM for fiscal year 22. This will include some HVAC projects that we have at both Lincoln and Washington that will be done in fiscal year 22, as well as some other district planned projects for building envelopes, interior surfaces, things like that, that we have that we can utilize our LTFM dollars for.
If I might add one comment, this is a specific stream of money that was created by the legislature for the purposes of making sure that buildings had a facilities maintenance budget. This has been a real win for all school districts across the state of Minnesota to be more planful about doing projects. So again, this is a funding source that cannot be used for anything other than maintaining facilities. And it is a relatively small dollar amount if you consider the scope of projects we have in the district. But I just wanted to make sure that that was clear, that this fund is set aside only for maintenance of facilities.
Yep, and I can add, each year we ask the board to approve this, and it's a 10-year plan moving forward. So each year we have to bring this to the board and ask you to consider it for each different fiscal year as we're certifying the levy.
See, Amanda, to that, can you just comment, are there any significant changes since last year when we looked at this? I mean, it looks very similar. We
No,
saw
the only additions we have are the two projects I spoke about with the HVAC projects at both Lincoln and Washington. So those will be the only additions that we had that weren't on there last year.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Correct.
Bob, did you have anything to add with regard to this?
I don't have a ton to add. Amanda did it real well. And the nice thing about this is that we work very closely together. We also work with our IEA, who's a consultant with health and safety, and they put together their stuff up there in the category 1 where you see the health and safety things. So this is a huge windfall for the outstate and the smaller schools throughout the district. And we're very, very happy that we have this every single year for you guys to potentially approve. So I don't have much else to say other than we're real excited every year in July to come present this and hopefully get a thumbs up on it.
This is a good chance then to turn it over to the board. Board, any questions for Bob and or Amanda? Okay, hearing none. I'm going to turn things over to Eric. Eric serves on the Facilities Committee, and I'll ask Eric to introduce this motion.
I move that the board approve as presented.
And I'll make the second on that. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? And I see none. Eric, I'll ask you to do the roll call vote.
Yep. Mark?
Aye.
Nikki?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Jelaine?
Aye.
Christina?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
And I myself, and I, 7-0 pass.
Thank you, folks.
Thank
Item D tonight is resolution calling for the general election. I'll once again turn things over to Mr. Elstad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The item that you are being asked to consider tonight is a resolution that we ask for every time we have a school board member election on the ballot. There are 3 members of the board whose terms end in December of 2020. And they are Eric Schuster, Tim Jensen, and Christina Ingvoldson. And this is just asking for your consideration to call the general election to have those seats vacated again, excuse me, not vacated, but have board members take those seats again as you up in January for your organizational meeting.
With that, any questions from board members regarding this? Okay.
Maybe,
ahead,
Jeff,
Lori.
can I just to clarify, so this motion is really just to establish the general election so that an election will occur to fill those 3 seats. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. What you're asking the community then is to put this general electorate on the ballot so that the community consider the vacant board positions.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, I will move that the board approve the resolution relating to the election of school board members and calling the school district general election.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Eric, I'll turn it over to you for the roll call.
Mark?
Aye.
Nikki?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Jelaine?
Aye.
Christina?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
And I myself, and I, 7-0 pass.
That motion carries. Item E tonight, I'm going to turn things over to Mr. Elstad. A little bit more of a continuing presentation, not a continuing, but a nice concise summary of the presentation that we have in fact heard, but it's always good to hear this and to keep this fresh and in front of us, and that has to do with the levy that we'd be introducing this fall. I'll turn things over to Mr. Elstad.
Thank you. I'm going to, if I can, pardon my interruption here. I want to be able to pull up this presentation. And I will do so right now. I'll wait for a thumbs up from our board chair to now see that that screen is up. Thank you. Mr. Chair and members of the board, tonight, we have taken over 2 months of careful consideration with our school board to present this recommendation for your decision this evening. This decision actually goes back a lot further than that. It goes back to 2013 when the board, the community approved an operating levy at that time of 7 years. And so what I want to share with you is just information that would be that you've heard before, but I also want to make sure that it's clear as to how the decisions were arrived at. So what I'm going to be presenting along with my colleague Amanda Heilman tonight will be community context, some of the funding pressures that our district is in presently and would continue, how we arrived at this decision, what the actual referendum recommendation is for you, and then finally for your discussion and vote in this matter. Just as a reminder for you, 94%, again, this was a poll taken in 2018, that 94% of our community felt that the job performance of our teachers and instructional staff were excellent or good. Likewise, again, 93% felt the quality of the education was excellent or good, and that 91% agreed that there was a good value. So to me, that really just edifies the comment, strong schools equals strong communities. And we certainly feel that way because I believe we're building a strong school district. And within that strong school district, we remain a strong and vibrant and vital community. As I mentioned, our previous operating levy was passed in 2013, and that was a 7-year operating levy. It does expire at the end of this year into 2021. And what I want to make sure that the board and community understand is within that we've kept our promises. We have not asked for any additional operating expenses during the time from 2013 to present. And during that time, we have had balanced budgets every year, in addition to maintaining a reasonable fund balance for cash flow and unanticipated expenses. Within that, we have saved taxpayers money because, as you remember, when we sold our bonds last February, we had a lower than anticipated interest rate, which is going to save taxpayers money on our current bond for the high school building. Lastly, just a quick reminder that within school funding, there are separate pots of money and they cannot be transferred to and fro. One of them is bonds are for building and levies are for learning. And that's a simple way for reminding us that bonds are really separated, legally separated, and they can only be spent on bricks and mortar and building, and that our operating levies are again legally separated from the budget for operations. So the 2019 vote that was taken last November was a bond vote for the high school. And we certainly appreciate, more than appreciate, the support that our community has shown us to make sure that our facilities are in great shape from now for the foreseeable future. But this part of levy is also a part of the funding that we request from our community to make sure that the operations of the district can be successful. I'll turn it over to, at this point, to Amanda.
So as we continue moving forward and looking at maintaining balanced budget as a school district, we obviously have 80% of our revenue coming from state funding. And as you can see, our funding pressures continue to increase. As you can see from this graph, this is a state basic general education funding per student. That blue dotted line on this graph shows where we should be if the state funding had been adjusted for inflation over time. And we should be at about $7,150 per student. And right now we're only at $6,567 per student. So that's a $583 per student gap, which equates to about $3 million in revenue that we're not receiving each year because the state funding has not kept pace with inflation. In addition to that, we have required academic and support programs that are costing the district nearly $7 million more than we're receiving from the state and federal governments to help support those programs. So what this means for us as a district is if our operating levy is not renewed in November of 2020, we will lose about $2.5 million per year. which is going to require significant cuts to programs and services. And these would be in addition to the cuts that we've already talked about and already approved. So we've cut $500,000 for the 1920 school year, and we just approved another $2 million in cuts for the 2021 school year. This graph just shows where we are as far as our voter approved levies. As you can see, Owatonna falls within the bottom third of the big nine. You can see Faribault and Northfield are both higher than where we are at. You can see that Austin looks like an outlier on this graph. It looks like they have a very low operating levy, which they do currently, but they are going out to their voters this fall to ask for a $505 per pupil unit increase. So as you can see, these funding pressures are increasing for school districts across the state. And this graph just shows us where we are at as far as an unassigned fund balance. The board target for unassigned fund balance is 8 to 10%. And as you can see, this graph really illustrates the cyclical nature of a levy. So as Jeff mentioned, we passed our last levy in 2013, where we had dropped below that board target of 8 to 10%. And with the community support, we were able to build back up our fund balance over that cycle time. And now we are coming to the end of that levy. And with these funding pressures that continue to increase, we see that we will drop below that 8 to 10% threshold here at the end of our levy cycle. And as you know, we do our best to stretch every dollar and to maintain those balanced budgets, as Jeff had mentioned earlier. And we want to maintain that quality education for all students. But with these funding gaps, it's becoming increasingly difficult to continue to do that without some additional revenue to help make up these gaps. So without some additional revenue, we are going to be forced to make additional cuts, which will obviously impact class sizes and programming and staffing levels.
So when we were looking at addressing these financial challenges, there are basically three ways for us to do this. One would be to cut expenses, which would mean drastic cuts across the district. The next option would be to increase revenue through an operating levy, or a combination of both, which in fact has a different impact or a better impact on our taxpayers. When exploring these different options, we wanted to start first with understanding that education funding is truly a shared partnership. It's shared between state and federal governments and also local communities. Amanda just iterated to you as well, or reiterated to you, the difference in that those funding gaps have allowed local communities, or allowed, but have required local communities to help us fill in the gap. And just as a quick reminder, we also know that voters have the opportunity to provide additional funding to their schools, or for their schools. This is different from our other civic colleagues in both the city and the county. City councils and county boards have the right to levy authority, whereas our school board has limited levy authority. And so that's what requires public votes for operating funding as well as bond funding. The decision-making process for this particular process started back in February and March of this year. We were absolutely moving forward with a plan to communicate. However, in March 15th of 2020, COVID-19 made itself present, and that response became something very daunting for the district. We shifted gears because we recognize that it is our responsibility to provide quality education. So within the time frame of March to the present, we've really been putting most of our efforts into the COVID-19 response for our school district. On May 7th, the Finance Committee then did review our funding options, and Amanda shared with them the funding shortfalls that we anticipate. On May 20th, this was the first time that this information was shared with the full school board in a work session, and that we were during that time reviewing the funding options. On June 22nd, there was an administrative recommendation brought to the school board, and that would have been our last regular meeting. And so tonight, what we're asking for is your consideration to vote on the referendum recommendation. And just a couple other dates of note for you. School will be starting the last Monday in August 31st, as well as early voting that may begin for all of our constituents on September 18th. And then November 3rd would be our election day. As we discuss these various approaches, we looked at the shared approach to try to find a way to not only continue to tighten our belt across the school district to be responsible consumers of public dollars, but also to request a small increase to our operating levy of our voters to make sure that we could maintain that quality of education as well as a responsible use of dollars for the next 10 years without having to ask our community for more. So what we're asking you again tonight, there would be 2 questions on the November 3rd ballot. Question 1 is simply to renew the existing levy. And question 2 would be an increased levy in 2022 and in 2025. And if I might just call out, if we looked at a $175,000 home, what that means is that in 2021, there would be no new tax increase for tax levy because that would be a year that we would just be able to get through with our current budget cuts. In 2022, that value of home at $175,000 would go up approximately $10 per month. And then we wouldn't see another increase until 2025, and that would be a similar increase of about $10 more per month. It's a phased-in levy, but it also phases in the tax impact for our taxpayers. Combined with the $5.25 million in cuts that we would intend to continue to tighten our belt with over the next 3 years, we believe that this is the best recommendation for the board to consider.
So as Jeff mentioned, this will be a 2-question ballot. The first question obviously would be the renewal of our existing levy. And that would be on a household size of 175,000. It would be about 50 cents per month tax increase just for the annual inflation adjustment that we have. So there's no new revenue that we're asking for in question 1. Question 2 would be our phased in operating levy approach that Jeff had mentioned. So obviously there'd be that $0 tax increase in 2021. So the first tax increase would come in 2022 and it would be that $10 per month. And then again, on the second increase would be in 2025, there would be an additional $10 per month coming in. So what this represents is about $1.6 million in additional annual revenue from 2022 to 2024. And then an additional 1.6 million in 2025 to 2032. And question 2 would be contingent on question 1 passing. So question 1 would have to pass in order for question 2 to pass. Here is the ballot language that we will be asking for your consideration tonight. So question 1, obviously, as you can see, this question is to renew the existing referendum revenue authorization of $482.90 per pupil. And that'll be subject to an annual increase in rate of inflation. And as you can see in that bold area down there, by voting yes on this ballot question, our taxpayers are voting to extend the existing property tax referendum that is scheduled to expire. And here's question 2, as we mentioned earlier, that the bulleted points down there. So we're going to be asking for a $300 per pupil increase for taxes payable in 2022 through 2024. And then we'll ask for that additional $300 per pupil unit for taxes payable in 2025 through 2030. And since we're delaying that first year of increase, this levy would essentially go for 9 years so that we would wrap both question 1 and question 2 over that 10-year operating levy period so that we could provide the financial stability we're needing. So by voting yes on the second ballot question, obviously our taxpayers would be voting for a property tax increase.
So as we look at the benefits of the shared approach that we've discussed previously, we believe this is a responsible way for us to increase and get the monies that are needed for us to continue to shorten that gap between state and federal funding. It does spread out the tax increase over time, so it's not something that we're asking on the very front end, but indeed it stages it over the next 10 years. Just as a quick reminder, there would be no increase in taxes in 2021, and this is a very thoughtful way that we looked at the potential response or the COVID-19 actuality of our current financial situation, certainly in hopes that our economy would recover moving forward into 2022. So your first tax increase by our taxpayers would not be seen until 2022, and then again another raise in 2025. This does partner our community and provide financial stability over the next 10 years. We are combining budget cuts, and as we've mentioned before, we have already made cuts and would continue to make cuts on an annual basis so that we are making sure that tax impact isn't quite as big. This, we believe, is a fiscally conservative and respectful approach and asking for what is needed, when it's needed, versus all of it up front. And just a quick reminder that ag land is not taxed for operating levy questions. For those that do own ag land, they are only taxed on their house, garage, and 1 acre.
So what if if both questions pass? What this essentially does for us is it helps us to provide financial stability for the district through the 2030-2031 school year. And which means we're able to maintain all of the quality programming and activities we currently have. We're able to maintain our appropriate class sizes, and we're able to continue moving forward on our career and technical education programs. What if both questions fail? Essentially what this means is we would have another 6.5 million in additional cuts through 2022 and 2023, which would be beyond the 2 million that we've already approved for the 2020-21 school year. And beyond that, if we have no additional funding coming in, there would be additional cuts moving forward as well. So what do these cuts mean? It would mean that we would be looking at class size increases through teacher layoffs. We would be looking at cuts to school and district support services, which could include administrative, custodial, clerical, healthcare, and just cuts to academic activities, athletic and music programs as well.
So again, what you've been asked to look at there are 4 basic themes within this preparation of this very important issue. We do believe that strong schools drive strong communities, and we believe that Owatonna is a viable community that does need to maintain the school district, as well as we've kept our promises. When you voted in 2013 as taxpayers, the voters approved a 7-year operating levy, and that's in fact what we did deliver to the community without any additional asks and operating expenses. There are funding pressures, though, that we are not able to control from state and federal gaps that have made the quality of our education an increasingly difficult task to overcome. So what we're asking and working together with our community is to find a shared partnership between those state and federal dollars and the local community to continue to support the quality of education that has been prevalent in the Owatonna Public Schools. In finality then, we are recommending to you tonight to consider a vote for 2 questions on the November 3rd ballot. Again, question 1 is just to renew our current and existing levy. It does continue previously from our approved funding, as well as provides a minimal tax impact for the inflation adjustment. Question 2 then would be asking for a small increase in 2022 and 2025, which would be phased in over time to alleviate the tax impact for our taxpayers. And just a quick reminder that there would be no tax increase if question 2 is approved until 2022. Those questions and successful passage of those, combined with $5.25 million in cuts over the next 3 years, would lead us to a balanced budget over the next 10 years. With that, I would open it up for board discussion and questions. I will do so right now.
As the presentation disappears from your screen and I have a chance to see each of your smiling faces again, right off the bat, any thoughts, comments, perspectives? Because I'm going to go around the horn and ask each of you again, if you would, please. In fact, if I can do that, I'd like to start with that. And as you appear on my screen, Lori, you would go first. Can you just give us your perspective, Lori, and each of you? Where do you stand on this, and how do you feel about the presentation as we've seen it tonight?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Well, you guys have done an excellent job. I know Amanda has been working long and hard for quite some time on this, and Jeff, you do a great job of summarizing some really challenging issues. And I think, to not belabor a euphemism, but really threading the needle here. I mean, it's a challenging time for a number of reasons, but the facts are what they are. And it's our job to fund our education and our community. I know we'll step forward when we ask. I do have one clarifying question, if I might. Is now a good time? So Amanda, I know, or maybe Jeff, you can comment. I find the ballot language so legalese. It's not very intuitive. Most people, I don't know, I find it odd. And given my profession, I don't know what that says. Can you just confirm that that's actually statutorily required of us to express it that way? And then can you comment about how a taxpayer can learn more carefully what the impact is for them?
Yeah, I can jump into that question for you, Lori. We actually worked, Ayler's our financial advisor, myself, worked directly with the Minnesota Department of Education on putting this ballot language together to make sure that all the requirements were met as far as how we have to do the phase-in levy. Because a phase-in levy is a little bit different approach than we've done in the past. And so all of the requirements have been met for how we have to set that forward. So that's how the language ended up coming to be what it is. So that is what it is. And then as far as the taxpayer impact, we are going to have an online tax calculator. Ayler's and I are working together on that right now to get that up. And so once that's up, we will obviously have that out on our website for taxpayers to go to see what their potential tax impact is based on their actual home value.
Thank you.
Yep.
If I might add something, Lori, just to the notion around ballot language, we do actually access a law firm that specializes in ballot language to make sure indeed that we've met all of the legal requirements for that ballot language. And then furthermore, I would ask anyone that has or wants more information about these facts and finance, they can quickly find that on our website. And again, within our website, we will be having a one-page document that gives out general values. But again, as Amanda indicated, we'll be working with our financial partners to provide a more concise review of potential taxation in regard to this election.
And thank you for adding that, Jeff, because Dorsey Whitney, our attorneys, were involved in that conversation with the Minnesota Department of Ed as well.
Yeah, I'm sure. Thank you so much.
Nikki, I'll turn to you, ask for your comments or your perspective.
Again, I think you guys do a great job explaining what is all involved and showing what the ramifications are should these not pass. My only concern is, and again, I'm not asking you to predict the future by any means, but should anything happen to make elections, how do we say, strange this year due to COVID, if there's any delays in elections or anything along those lines, is there any contingencies as far as going forward if any elections get delayed?
That's a great question, Nikki. And how I would respond to that is we have to really just prepare for what we believe is a canvassing election results as per November 3rd election. If there are unusual delays, we'll have to kind of take that in stride. I'm not certain what that might look like. And again, I don't know that anyone would even know to anticipate that. However, I think it is something that we need to be cognizant of. I have often told people that sometimes when these sorts of questions are on the ballot, perhaps it's the only non-political question that's on the ballot. But I would just add that we will certainly explore if we are given an indication that there could be some delay in election, we will explore what the ramifications might be. But at this point, unless it went beyond June 30th of 2021, I think we would be okay because our current levy does run through June 30th of 21. And so I would hope that there would be some leniency there if there was some sort of delay, but that's a good question.
Thank you very much.
Nikki, anything else from you?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, thank you. Christina.
I think you guys have done a great job putting together the information, making it something that most can understand. I think this is the best scenario we have right now, and hopefully all goes well.
Eric, I'm going to turn to you.
I feel really comfortable with how this was drawn up and presented. I'm really happy with how we're able to present it for staying the same for the first year after approval and the slow increase instead of all of it up front the first or the second year, that it stretched out over time periods with basically like normal inflation, like everything else. So it's a gradual increase for the taxpayer. And given that extra year to try to come back from this COVID issue and get back to normal.
Eric, thanks. Jolene, how about you?
I will echo the sentiments of the other board members. You guys have done a great job. I appreciate the out of the box thought process with the structure and the delay in the increases. And I also appreciate the 10-year timeframe that provides a decade worth of stability for the school district as well as the community, knowing what to expect from us and no potentially additional asks over the next 10 years. So keep up the good work. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jolene. How about you, Tim?
Following everyone else, I guess I appreciate the creativity of the administration and finding a way to make this as palatable as possible and something that will meet the needs of the district, which we really have to do. And, you know, I'm sure everyone would rather not bring this forward this year, but at the same time, this is the situation we're in, and we have to be as creative as possible. I think we have been.
Tim, thanks a lot. Yes, in summary, and in closing, Amanda and Jeff, I can't thank you enough for the hard work that you've done, Amanda. That was a stroke of brilliance to think about it from the standpoint of the two questions, and then the second question being phased in, only asking for what we need when we need it. I think that really makes a lot of sense, and I'm in high hopes that the community will see it that way as well. With that, we're at a point, does anybody have any last or closing questions, comments with regard to this? Okay, hearing none. I will then move that the board approve the resolution relating to determining the necessity of renewing an expiring referendum revenue authorization and approving new referendum revenue authorizations and calling a special election and a referendum thereon.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Eric, I will turn it over to you for the roll call vote.
Mark.
Aye.
Nikki.
Aye.
Tim.
Aye.
Jolene.
Aye.
Christina.
Aye.
Lori.
Aye.
And I myself, and I, 7-0 pass.
Motion carries. Folks, thank you very much. Lastly, here would be item F, which would be gifts to the district. And I'm going to ask Mr. Elstad to speak to that.
Yeah, thank you. So we have two gifts tonight that we are receiving on behalf of community members. We are receiving $5,100 on behalf of the Music Boosters of Owatonna to purchase bows for some of our various string instruments in the district. We're all crossing our fingers that we get to hear those instruments play at some point within the next year. But again, that's a very generous gift, as Music Boosters of Owatonna have always been a very generous benefactor for our school district. And then the second gift actually comes from the students and parents of the class of 2020. Obviously, you know that this has been a rather interesting year for our seniors. And as I've shared with some of them, including my own daughter, that this is one of those years that will have the phrase, do you remember back in 2020 when? And I think we all will have that. But again, what they have donated is a tree, a beautiful red maple tree that will be donated to our new high school campus with a plaque really dedicated to the class of 2020 and their perseverance and resilience based upon COVID-19. So those are the two gifts that we have this evening.
Nice gifts indeed. Any questions from the board members on this? In that case, I will approve that the board approve the resolution for acceptance of gifts as presented.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Eric, I'll turn it over to you two. Roll call, please.
Mark.
Aye.
Tim.
Aye.
Jolene.
Aye.
Christina.
Aye.
Aye.
And I myself, and I, 7-0 pass.
Motion carries. Before we leave tonight, Daniela, you might, if you would mind unmuting yourself. We kind of breezed right past you when we zipped through the board forum. Here you are, you're at the midpoint of your summer. Tell us about your summer. Tell us how things are going.
Yeah, it's going pretty good. I just started working again at a restaurant, Lava Burger, so I'm keeping myself busy there. And then we're starting to slowly ease back into volleyball, which they've like canceled a few of like volleyball camps, but we're slowly like taking 45-minute practices and keeping safe. But yeah, I'm keeping myself pretty busy.
Good. Glad to hear that. You're coming in at a time when we're kind of asking you to jump into the deep end of the pool with the things that are happening here at the school board. So I'm glad that you're continuing to be a part of this, and we know that you'll enjoy it as the year goes on. Anybody else have anything for the good of the order before we close? With that, I will make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Eric, one last time.
Mark,
Aye.
Nikki,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Jolene,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
and I myself tonight. 7-0 past the end of the session.
Motion carries. Folks, have a good night. Keep an eye out for the notification with regard to that potential special meeting end of July or early August. With that, everyone have a great night.
Good night.